So it's rolling now. Bethany Bertapelle,
Hey.
welcome to the hot seat.
Thanks.
So, all right, you are the next clinician up, with the kind of staff video interviews. So, I think we'll just kind of start from the beginning, which is how in the heck did you end up here?
Well, I saw you speak at a training event. And
Was that the one at Forest View?
Yep,
Okay.
yep, and then another one in 2020, and
Which
at
one was that?
Mary Free Bed.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was there just doing some trainings. And
So I didn't convince you the first time.
I really liked where I was at, but yeah. So I've always been passionate about movement and always had, I think, a pretty active life. Grew up in the country on a farm, and there's just always lots to do. Grew up playing soccer, and when I thought about being ready to move on to the next chapter in my professional life, I wanted something that really sparked something special, where I felt passionate about the work. And so I was looking around and thinking about what the next chapter might be, and I happened to see an opening at the Wellbeing and thought I really liked that place when I heard about it before. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought, I think this is the next chapter.
Okay.
It was something that already had been such a part of my life.
Right. That you were experiencing personally. It was important to you personally.
Yeah.
And you were at the YWCA for how many years were you there?
About 9 years.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And then what you were saying was like, that it was a good experience for you. And you got obviously some great experiences.
Yeah.
And then after, sorry, I just had lunch. Then after, not being there 9 years, it was more like, okay, I've spent my time here, and now it's time to move on to something different. And here's this place that really kind of mirrors my same like values and interests. And how long have you been here now? I should know this. I should have looked this up.
It's been
2-3
about
years, right?
2.5 years. I think this fall it'll be 3 years, so we're coming up on 3.
Okay,
So,
right. I think I have I know I have birth dates in my calendar.
Yeah.
I don't know if I need to put in the anniversary dates, but you've been here for a little while for sure.
Yeah.
And so tell me about when you, I guess, like your experiences with exercise and really noticing this connection between, the impact that it had on your mental health. Were you like, did you play sports in high school, things like that? Was it back then or was it afterwards when you're like, oh man, this just makes me feel better?
Yeah. So I'm originally from Montana, western Montana in the Rockies, and I know it's beautiful there. Yeah, and I used to go back there summers even after my family moved to Michigan when I was a kid. And I grew up with really a culture of being in the outdoors a lot, having a lot of adventures, climbing on things, and really being encouraged to explore that way and move. And it always felt like a really positive thing. And then mostly grew up in the country and worked with animals on a farm, did gardening, all of that. So I was used to being outside, and that was how I played a lot of the time. And I was really thankful for that. And I grew up playing rec league soccer from preschool through 12th grade. So soccer is still my love when it comes to sports. Yeah.
Really? All right. Yeah. So not wiffle ball.
We'll
start a soccer ball tournament.
Exactly. Yeah, my skills for catching are not quite as good as my skills for kicking.
Okay. So, what position were you in soccer? What was your forte?
Yeah, I played for so long that sometimes I went through periods where I was really liking one position or another, but mostly midfield and defense. Okay. I went through a period where I would only play midfield, and I loved it, and I thought it was the best because you could go all over the field, and then periods where I really liked defense. Played forward for a while, but it was never quite my favorite.
Sure. You're not the flash type.
Yeah.
You're more like gritty, grindy.
Yeah, I'll be there in the trenches getting it done, but I don't need to be in the front.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so I still really love soccer. And
that's cool.
Yeah, and now as an adult, you asked, what convinced me that exercise is so fundamental. I think the period of my life where my mental health and probably my physical health too were the worst was the period when I was the least active. I would say when I went off to college, I didn't really have anything in place to be active other than walking around campus, which I did quite a lot.
Where did you go again?
Calvin.
Okay.
Yep, and then later to Grand Valley. But other than walking around campus, I really wasn't, I think I set foot in the gym once. And I took a few PE classes as they were required, and they were fun.
Yeah, because at that point you weren't playing at Calvin, so you weren't like, okay, I need to train, I need to, for you, all of the, kind of like prescripted exercise was about soccer, right? Faster, stronger, all of that. But then you're like, okay, I'm in college, I'm not playing anymore. I don't really need to exercise, but it turns out you did. You just didn't. You didn't.
I really did.
You just didn't know it.
Yeah, and I think, like a lot of people, when we find ourselves in that position, it's just no one's really talked with us about our mental health. No one has talked to us about what do you do when you're feeling really down. I certainly had never heard the term coping skills, and so a lot of that was just out of my wheelhouse. I hadn't been really introduced to it. And I think I really didn't believe in the connection between my self-care and how I was feeling. When I felt bad, I didn't take care of myself, so then I felt worse, and it was really a cycle. And looking back, I think if I had maybe had some of those things in place, I would have had some healthy outlets and had a different experience. So now that's what I try to include in my life in different ways, try to have fun with exercise, and that's what I want to offer to people here when I work with them. So.
Yeah. Something like, being able to offer, the clients here, something that you wish you would have had back in college when you were younger, and same with me. I did not know back then what I know now, and I really wish I did. I think that my experiences, in my 20s and early 30s would have been radically different than what they were. So live and learn, I guess, right? So as a therapist, what would you say your specialties are? Like what would you say you mostly focus on, if there is such a thing? Like your background, just kind of talk to me about you as a therapist.
Yeah, so originally I started off thinking that I was going to do macro level work, and I was going to work on housing justice and things like that. I did that in my internships early on, and then something just really sparked my interest in working with people one-on-one and hearing their stories and helping people just find freedom, find joy in their everyday lives. And I started working with people in the community. I did a lot of home-based work. It was kind of how I got to know Kent County when I moved to this side of the state.
Who was that with?
Then it was called Lutheran Child and Family Services.
Okay.
So I went into...
No, it's Lutheran Social Services, I do believe.
I think so.
Sorry.
Changed the name. I think it might be Wellspring. So I got to have a lot of interesting experiences just getting to know people in their homes, meeting them where they're at, and doing a lot of interesting things. And then after that I went to the YWCA, and that has been a big thing that has shaped what I work on with people on as a therapist. So at the Y I work with people on recovering from abuse and trauma, and that has really become a passion for me that I want to work with people on lifelong because it's so needed. So even here, I mostly specialize in working with trauma survivors, though I do work with people on other issues as well. So I do EMDR therapy and acceptance and commitment therapy primarily, because I found those to be really helpful in creating meaning and figuring out what you want in your life after trauma. So
EMDR, eye movement desensitization
and reprocessing.
Thank you.
It's a long name.
Yeah, it is. So that's what we call it, EMDR.
Yeah.
And explain that a little bit, because that is just wild stuff. And the thing is that when you hear about it, you're like, oh, for crying out loud, come on.
Yeah.
But it is an empirically validated form of treatment. So just explain it, in as brief as you can, what it is and what and how you do it, and
right, exactly. It involves eye movements. I'm a pretty skeptical person, so when I heard about EMDR, I thought, I don't know, because sometimes ideas get put out there and there's not always a lot of empirical evidence behind them. And so I want to see the evidence. If I'm going to spend the time learning a certain therapy or pitching it to my clients, I want to know there's a good reason why I'm recommending it. So I read a lot of the research. I took my time to see that this was something that had a lot of evidence behind it. It's been around since the 80s, and it's been practiced all over the world, and there's been a great deal of research on it, comparing it to other therapies, comparing it to control groups. And the evidence shows that for most people, or for a great deal of people, EMDR is going to have progress sooner than a lot of other therapies, specifically for treating trauma and somewhat for anxiety as well.
Okay.
And the World Health Organization and the Veterans Administration actually recommend it because of the evidence that's out there. So I completed my EMDR training in 2019. So the following year I had to quickly learn how to do it virtually with the pandemic, but it actually works pretty well virtually most of the time. So EMDR essentially works on looking at how trauma has shaped our views of ourselves, because usually there's some message from the trauma that's maybe not entirely true, that's maybe not fair to ourselves, such as I'm unworthy, I'm unlovable, I can't trust anybody. So basically we look at the experiences that have reinforced that message throughout your life, looking at the earliest time someone felt that way and how subsequent experiences have reinforced it. And then we see if there's any experiences you've had that contradict that message, that tell you, this person showed me I was lovable, this person showed me I was safe or worthy. And then we basically look at those competing messages that have, been in that person's life. And then we use these methods like the eye movement. That's what everyone thinks of with EMDR, where you follow back and forth either someone's hand, or you might follow a light bar, or if people have something going on with their eyes where that doesn't feel comfortable or they're not able to track visually, we also can use tapping. So I would have my clients tap, like for example, like on their own legs, and I would kind of show them the pace.
Okay, interesting.
So what we call that is bilateral stimulation, or BLS.
Okay.
So whether it's the visuals or whether it's tapping, you can also use auditory stimuli, headphones that go back and forth. There are a lot of new tech coming out around this, so you can have different ways that people can access it. The research shows when we have the bilateral stimulation and we're bringing up the traumatic memory and
at the same time.
Yep. So there's a structured process of how we bring this up. Importantly, we're bringing them up and we're doing the bilateral stimulation when we're not talking about it, right? So in the frontal cortex, right up here, this is where we're doing a lot of our cognitive work.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So essentially in EMDR, we're accessing the amygdala.
Okay. The lizard brain.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Yep.
So that's the part of our brain that is sort of most in control when scary things happen. Right.
Yep. That's like the warning bells, the danger.
Right.
Yep. Okay.
Right. Exactly. So with EMDR, we're trying to access that sort of less verbal part of the brain. And by doing that, we're sort of tapping into the feeling of what happened versus just our thoughts about what happened.
Okay.
We're doing a bit of both, but we know trauma really lives in the body, and so that's where we want to address it. For a lot of people, what's most distressing about traumatic experiences coming up is things like panic attacks or feeling in their body unsafe, as well as the messages that may be limiting in their lives. So in a nutshell, a complicated therapy to explain, but in a nutshell, that's how I would explain EMDR.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I think you did a great job. I mean, very, and as brief as you could, a very, comprehensive explanation of this very, important form of treatment and effective form of treatment. So that's great. And then you also, acceptance and commitment therapy. I almost said sort of community treatment, but that's a different ACT. Yeah. So ACT ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy.
Yes.
Describe that a little bit.
Yeah, I love ACT. It's kind of a funny story how I actually encountered it. So a lot of people don't know this, but there are many therapies. A lot of people come in and they say, oh, I thought it was just therapy. I didn't know there were different types. And that's understandable. We haven't done the best job, I think, advertising those people and letting people know there are different types. So if you've had a bad experience with either one therapist or one type of therapy, that does not mean therapy is not for you. It might mean just you need a different fit right now. So I encourage people to keep looking until you find your fit. And I even tell people that when I meet with them and say, if I'm not it for you, let's find what is, because that's totally okay. The most important thing, is that people find what they need.
Okay.
So with ACT, I actually learned about it because one day I got really frustrated and said, there's so many types of therapy, how am I going to choose what to specialize in? Because you can't do them all well as a single therapist. So I actually I was at the YWCA at the time, and I went into my supervisor's office and said, okay, if you could only do one type of therapy forever, what would it be? And immediately my supervisor got excited, grabbed some books from his shelf and said this, and it was ACT.
Okay.
And he told me about why that had spoken to him specifically as a trauma therapist. Although I think ACT is great for so many things in life, because it taps into meaning making in your personal philosophy.
So the acceptance piece is like recognizing, our lack of control in this world in a way, right? Like we control ourselves and that's about it.
Right.
But then the commitment piece is about, us committing to do, whatever we may be able to do to exert some control over the situation to the extent that we can. Is that would you say a fairly...
Exactly, yeah. So essentially in ACT there's 6 skill sets. So in a way it's very simple. There are 6 skills you learn, but then you learn them in all of these different ways and applications. So the 4 of them are kind of related to present moment awareness and mindfulness and how we're interacting with what's happening right now and understanding it, and how we can sometimes over-identify with a thought that's coming up, right? Like someone might have a thought of, I'm a failure, I can't do this, no one is gonna like me, no one wants me at that party. And we identify with that thought so much, it feels like that thought is us.
The warm blanket, right? Like that, okay.
Yeah.
Right. It's familiar. It's,
right.
Okay.
Yeah, or we identify with, I'm an anxious person, right? And we make that a part of us to the point where it's not something we're experiencing anymore, and it's not something that we can change, right? We over-identify with it. So ACT teaches us how to kind of, instead of having them right up close, we have them just far enough away that we can see them more clearly, and we can say, this thought is actually not me, right? And then we learn some skills about, well, when you know that thought isn't you, but it's coming up a lot, what do you do with that?
Right.
So then 2 of the skills are committed action and values. So ACT is very much about the idea that you can tune into what's most important to you, right? So if you want to access your courage, or if you want to practice confidence that I can make friends, right? Or I can take care of myself when I'm feeling anxious or depressed, right? We can connect with that value, and then we can be brave and take action toward it, even when that little voice in our head is telling us we can't.
Okay. But if we're aware of that little voice, then we can, we can act in spite of it, right? Like, okay, I hear or I recognize this voice, I know what it is, and I also know that it's probably not true.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
And so even though that voice is there, and even though it feels, there's that feeling of truth to it, I can still do something else.
Yeah.
I don't have to, listen or react to it.
Right. Okay. Yeah. A metaphor I use with people sometimes of developing a relationship with our thoughts where we're aware but not sort of enmeshed with them is, let's say you have a book. It's awfully hard to really read the book well if it's smooshed right up in your face and you can only see maybe a couple of the words, right? It's too close. It's enmeshed with you. It's also hard to read it if it's on the other side of the room and closed, right? But if you have a book about here, you can read it, right? You can set it down when you need time to process. So it's kind of like that with our thoughts. We don't want to be totally unaware of them and shut them down and have them at the other opposite end of the room, right? We also don't want to be so enmeshed with them that we identify too much with our thoughts and don't see them as changeable, right?
Right, too close.
Right, exactly. So
well, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
So you kind of spoke a minute ago about people's experience in therapy. If they saw a therapist and it didn't go all that well, that maybe it was just, it wasn't the right fit with the therapist, or maybe it wasn't the right therapy, the right form of therapy. And as you said, there's all these different types out there, and I love that. I think that's great. Yeah. So encouraging people to give it another shot, or give it enough of a chance until you find the right person and the right form that works for you. But what advice or what would you say to somebody who's thinking about going to see a therapist that just hasn't made that leap yet? How would you encourage them, I guess, or what would you say to to get them to go,
right,
or help them go.
Yeah, I would say it, especially depending on the issue you're wanting to work on, it can be very important to find someone who specializes in the issues you're going through. It's impossible for us as individual therapists to specialize in everything, and it's important to me to be honest about the things I just don't know enough about to do it service. You know, I want to make sure people are connected with someone who has had the time to really study that issue. So I would say don't be afraid to ask about specializations, right? Or even, okay, you specialize in this. Have you worked specifically with people who struggle with that? Or what trainings have you done? And I think a person who's the right fit will be willing to answer those questions and not be offended by that.
Right.
And know that you're trying to make a wise choice.
Right.
I would say also someone you feel personally comfortable with. It's hard for therapy to be effective if you're feeling uncomfortable, if just there is even just a personality mismatch, which doesn't mean anyone's doing anything wrong.
Right.
Sometimes it's just, we can't all be everyone's cup of tea,
and
that's okay.
Yeah, I always say you have to like who you're going to see.
Absolutely, yeah. And I can feel that when there is that that fit and that click where I can tell, you know, my client is feeling like they're heard, they're respected, like I'm understanding their experience. So I would say listen to your gut too about how you're feeling. If you're noticing that there's something that is challenging for you, maybe be curious about it, right? Sometimes it could be that this person is asking questions that it's really hard for you to face. So I would say maybe ask yourself that, is it that this topic is really hard for me to look at and they're asking hard questions? That's not always a bad fit. Sometimes that's a great fit.
Sure.
You also don't want a therapist who is going to let you off the hook too easy, right? They're going to respect your boundaries, but
they have to find that balance, right? Between, you know, pushing you, but not too fast or too hard or too far, but you know, but also not pushing you at all, right? Where you just come in and, you know, you just talk and they say, you know, how does that make you feel? And then, and then they schedule for next week. Right.
Yeah. You want to know what work you're doing. You want to know like what your goals are. You want to have a sense of what am I working on in therapy? What am I gaining from it? And if you get to a point where you're not really sure, you know, you feel good when you go in, but you're not really sure what you're working on or what you should be doing between sessions. Not all therapy involves homework or things you do between sessions. But if that's something you really want and you need for the specific thing you're working on, it's okay also to ask your therapist, I'm ready for more work between sessions, bring it on. And a good therapist will be able to meet you there and say, or the right fit therapist will be able to meet you there and say, yes, okay, here are some things you could work on between. So,
And what would you say is it that you know, what do you like about your job as a therapist? And not just, you know, here at the Well-Being, but just as a therapist, like what do you like about it, would you say?
Yeah, I honestly, I've said this many times, I feel really lucky that this is my job. I absolutely love it. I think you never quite know until you go into a field what it's really going to be like for you, but I really enjoy talking with people about their stories, being able to be there for people, see them grow. And I know there have been people in my life who have really been there for me at key moments, including therapists, and I'm so appreciative to them for the ways my life has grown and changed, in part because they were there. And so I want to be able to be there and maybe offer something to someone at the right time that might change their life for the better. So
that's great. Thank you.
All
right, I guess the last question at this point is what makes the Well-Being just so freaking awesome?
Okay, so this is going to take the rest of our time. So
we've got you've got a 1 o'clock, so we've got 22 minutes.
I know. Honestly, I have said this before too. The best decision I ever made was marrying my husband. The second best decision I ever made was working at the Well-Being.
Wow.
I have truly loved some of the places I've worked. The YWCA will always be very special to me, and I'm thankful for all the years I had there. It taught me a lot, and I did some really meaningful work. But here, I know this is the right chapter for me. It has really enabled me to take care of myself. I love having a gym down the hall. That's fabulous.
Well, and what I also did not mention, which I meant to, is that Bethany, was it about a year or so ago, you were certified as a yoga instructor? Is it the RYT 200 level certification?
Yeah, it's CYT because
CYT,
I'm
sorry.
not affiliated with the Yoga Alliance, but that's a whole other thing.
But like went through a very extensive training, got your certification, and so not only is she a therapist here, you're also a yoga instructor.
Yeah.
Every Wednesday at 6 o'clock, yoga for runners.
Join us. Yeah, so it was, I think I started dreaming and scheming like a year or so ago, and then I finished it up this past fall. And then it's been a process of getting ready to get the class started and whatnot, and we were just chatting yesterday about another class idea I've been scheming up because I go big. I know. So yoga has been part of my life for on and off for I'd say a little over a decade. I didn't grow up with it, but I got to know it in my 20s a bit. A friend asked me to go to a class through the Parks and Rec department, which was great. And then I connected with a couple of hot yoga studios. And then after the pandemic, I was looking for a studio where I could get more serious about my practice. And I found Kula Yoga, which is really wonderful. And I found a great community there and a way to strengthen my practice, both mentally and physically. And I wanted to be able to start teaching and bring, again, you know, all the benefits I've gained from therapy, I want to bring to other people. The benefits I've gained from yoga, I want to bring to other people. And in my sessions with clients now, there's the option, if people want to, we start and end our sessions with a little stretch or a breathing exercise or different things like that. So I like to kind of bring that into the therapy room too, because those little bite-sized practices, they can really help with regulating our nervous system, helping us feel more comfortable in our bodies, and being able to, you know, you come into a therapy session and you're going to talk about hard things. If we can take care of ourselves, regulate our nervous system a little bit first, it's going to feel a lot safer going into that discussion. And then when you have to leave and go back out into your day, it's helpful if you can take a minute to reset, know you're safe, and be able to move on to the next thing with purpose.
Good, nice, nice bookends to your session. That's great. Yeah. So to have I mean, so part of what you like about being here is, you know, that there's a fitness center 50 feet from your office door, and there are fitness classes that you can come to as an employee for free. So you know, you're frequently at the yoga class led by Zoe, sometimes led by you, the boot camp class with Mike, stuff like that. But then also, I don't know, like that. This is, you know, for you to utilize it in your sessions with clients, it's just kind of a natural fit for you.
Right, absolutely. And even, you know, having this structure here at the Wellbeing, for me the biggest difference is a lot of times in the healthcare field, physical and mental health, I feel like we're limited by just being able to tell people, do this, it'll be good for your health. And then it's all up to that person to make it happen in their life. And we all know that's hard. We've all experienced how other priorities and other things can really crowd out movement from our lives. So I appreciate that here we not only tell people if we're exercising, you know, you'll feel better. We also can say, let's go down to the gym, right? I'll even have times where maybe someone is feeling dysregulated, right? Or they're going through something in session. It's always optional, but sometimes I'll ask people, you know, the gym's empty right now, or it's a slow day, and it's a Friday afternoon. Do you want to go down there and walk next to each other on the treadmills if the gym is empty? And we can see how that makes you feel. Every time, right? Every time. It helps people bring it down, feel better. And I've seen the change even in, as a trauma therapist, sometimes I do work with people for years because sometimes it takes a long time to really unravel the impact trauma's had in our lives, especially if it started at a young age. So I've had people I've worked with since before I was at the Wellbeing, and I've seen the difference it's made for them to have what we have here at the Wellbeing available to them, to train with Mike, to go to a yoga class, to find community, right, with other people who also want to be well and move.
Maybe the Starting Line Scholarship, right?
We're just finishing up Starting Line Scholarship program, which has been pretty special to be part of.
Good. You've enjoyed experiences? Okay, that's great.
I think it's important, not just that we move individually, not that just we tell people get a gym membership, you know, go to the gym, but also I think movement communities can be a really great, healthy way to find friendship, to find community. That's been my experience. I found some of my best friendships. Actually, one of my best friends I met at a Krav Maga class.
Okay.
And that was
we were
really
beating
amazing.
each other up.
I know, yeah. Learning self-defense with each other, and then that just blossomed into a friendship. And same at the yoga studio I now practice at. I've found some of my best friends there, and that way you already have a shared passion.
And I think that's what we have both witnessed with the Starting Line Scholarship, is that we take this group of 15 to 20 strangers, and every Tuesday they meet here at the Wellbeing for the fitness class, half-hour fitness class, and then after that, the mental health support group, an hour where they sit and talk with each other, and then they meet every Saturday at 8:30 for the run training. And to watch over this course of 10, 12 weeks, these bonds that form with people and these relationships. And I mean, I think you were saying last night at the final group last night, people are like, how do we keep this going? How do we, and I think part of it is, how do we keep, we want something in place where we can meet and exercise, some sort of structure. But I think another big part of it, maybe one of the biggest, is like, how do we keep meeting? Because we have these relationships now with each other. So
right. And not only does it help us to be able to hold that time sacred and carve it out, because we know someone's going to be texting us and saying, hey, where were you? We were running, or we were at the class. But also it's just so, I think it tends to another side of us. Like, I know when I get together with friends and we say like, hey, I'll meet you up at this class at the studio, when we both book it, and we're like, we're going to meet at this 7:30 class tonight, and we're going to chat. It tends to my physical self, right? My emotional and mental self. It also tends to my social self, because I'm going to walk in there, I'm going to see my friend, I'm going to say hi to people. So I really believe in the power of group fitness. I think it can be very supportive, healthy, collaborative, non-shaming. I think it has to be, if we want this to have healthy movement spaces. Yes, absolutely.
And I think about, in particular, say people that are struggling with depression or struggling with anxiety, that are socially isolated. That is just one of the many benefits of, if somebody exercises, they're going to get those benefits, the release of all these great neurotransmitters and feeling proud about what they did. But then if they're doing it in some sort of a group setting, then there's that socialization aspect that helps to bring them out of that, isolation they may be experiencing. So it's just like kind of win-win-win.
I find that time and again in therapy is so many people come in and they kind of know they're not the only person feeling this way, but they feel like I am uniquely flawed or unable, or my struggle with this is insurmountable, right? And they feel so isolated from other people. So even if there's someone else out there who's maybe feeling socially anxious, right, or struggling with their self-image or something like that, it's different when you build community and you see that, like, hey, I'm not alone. It's okay to feel this way, and it also does not have to limit me. I can find support and I can work through it. So we need each other.
Yes, we do. We do. And I'm, we're just, I and the Wellbeing is lucky to have you here, Bethany. I mean, I've thought many times that if I could, that you are clearly passionate about what we do here, and you are a dedicated professional, and like you kind of fit as a therapist exactly what we want. Somebody that is a dedicated professional, who does great work with their clients, that I personally enjoy working with, that you're fun, you like to laugh, you're just easygoing, easy to be around, and then you are passionate about this program that we have, and I think that you see what we have here, and that what we have is very special and very unique, and has a lot of potential to it, and so and that you're playing a big part in helping this grow, and
Thank you. I have to give you credit too, because I think you've done a lot here to create a healthy atmosphere, both for people to work in and for clients to come in, right? And I think that's very much felt, right? So I always have to give you credit for that, for building that atmosphere among the team for our clients and holding space for everyone. So
Yeah,
thank you for
I
that too.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
No, I do. I I'll close the place down before it ever becomes a place where people where therapists feel like they're being ground down, and clients, feel like they're just a number. I will, I would rather shut it down than let it become that, because I've worked in those places, and now with this place, it's I want it to be a healthy place for the people that work here, and a fun place, but also a professional place, and then just a place that clients truly enjoy coming to and feel valued and respected and then ultimately helped. So awesome. Thank you.
All right. Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Sure thing.
Bye everyone.
Great job, Bethany.